Saint Theodora the Empress. There was once a king in Constantinople named Theophilus. Though he was a Christian, he was deceived into believing that the icons should not be in the churches, and the Christians should not even venerate them. The king ordered his soldiers to remove all the icons from the churches. People were upset by this, and many Christians refused to obey him. Some of the faithful secretly venerated the icons, while others boldly venerated them publicly. Upon learning that people were ignoring Theophilus became angry and ordered his soldiers to torture and imprison all those who refused to follow his decree. Theophilus then commanded his government to persecute the right-believing Christians. His soldiers acted savagely and ruthlessly toward the priests, bishops, and even the monks. They tortured Christians, imprisoned some of them, and sent others into exile. The Orthodox people who escaped continued to honor the holy icons in secret, carefully hiding them so the iconoclasts would not find and destroy the pious images. Some time passed, and Theophilus decided that he wanted to get married. His mother gave him some advice. "My son, you should send representatives throughout the empire to bring the best and the most beautiful girls to the palace, so you can decide which one you like the best." The king liked the idea, and he did as his mother told him. A few days later, the prettiest girls in the empire arrived at the palace. Cassiani and Theodora were the two of the beautiful women brought to the palace, and both were known for their beauty and their chastity. The girls gathered into the palace's banquet hall for the king's decision. Theophilus arrived holding an apple, which he planned to give to the lady who was to become his queen. After surveying the girls, he decided that Cassiani was his favorite. Waiting to test her intelligence, the emperor approached her, and in order to remind his prospective bride of the Eve's disobedience in paradise, said, "All humanity's misfortunes began with the woman." Because she was a modest woman, Cassiani blushed. However, she also was very wise and cleverly responded to the emperor. "This is true, but all the humanity's joy also began with the woman," she said, referring to the eternal joy Christ's birth from the Panagia. The king admired Cassiani's audacity and wisdom, but he feared that because she was so courageous, she would censure him for his impious acts, especially for the persecution of the icons. So he gave the apple to Theodora, who was known for virtue and piety. Cassiani was both happy and relieved that she was not selected because she very much wished to become a nun. She abandoned the secular world, went to a monastery, and lived the rest of her life glorifying God in asceticism. Theodora married Theophilus, and they had 5 daughters and 1 son, Michael. Despite the fact that her husband was an iconoclast, Saint Theodora loved and honored both Christ's precious cross and the holy icons. She had hidden some icons in a box, and at night she would secretly venerate them, asking God to preserve the Orthodox and to enlighten her husband and deliver him from his heresy. At the time, there was a court jester named Dendaris who was living in the palace. Dendaris was a comic fool, being neither intelligent nor comely, but remained at the palace for the entertainment of the king and his friends. For some strange reason, though, Dendaris had permission to enter all the palace's rooms. One evening he entered the queen's room while she was praying and venerating her icons. "Mama, what are those?" he asked, pointing to the icons. In order to conceal the truth about her icons from the king, Theodora said, "These are my little babies, and I kiss them because I dearly love them." Dendaris left the room and went to the king while he was eating. Wanted to be entertained, Theophilus started speaking with Dandaris and asked where he had been. "I was in Mamma's room," he said, referring to the pious queen. The emperor asked, "What did Mamma say to you?" "She said that she has good babies." "And what did she do with her babies?" Theophilus asked suspiciously. Dandaris brought his palm to his mouth and kissed it. Theophilus became very angry because he suspected that the queen was secretly venerating icons. Immediately he got up from the table, stormed into Theodora's room and yelled, "My queen, are you not ashamed that you disobey my royal commands? Aren't you embraced to venerate icons which are nothing more than wood?" Theodora was startled, but quickly recovered and calmly feigned ignorance, saying, "Theophilus, what are you talking about? I have no idea what are you referring to. Who told you that I'm venerating icons?" "Dandaris," Theophilus replied. "My king, when Dandaris came into my room, I was combing my hair in front of the mirror. So he saw my reflection and those of my attendants, and asked what they were. I told him that the images he saw in the mirror were my babies." Theodora's clever explanation convinced Theophilus to calm down, and he left her and the icons alone. A few days later, Theodora brought the daughters Thecla, Anna, Thecla and Anastasia, Pulcheria and Maria to see their grandmother. The grandmother, who was very pious, took out some small icons from a hiding place for the girls to kiss. Like Theodora, she told her granddaughters that they are little babies which we should love and venerate. She also instructed the older girls not to say anything about the icons to their father. When the daughters returned to the palace, Theophilus asked about their visit to their grandmother's house. The 3 older children did not say anything about the icons, but Pulcheria, who was one of the youngest and just beginning to talk, said, "Grandma showed us the little babies." Theophilus again became enraged and told the girls they were not allowed to see their grandmother anymore. However, God took care of Saint Theodora, and the emperor was not angry with her. This was the environment Saint Theodora lived in. This was the environment Saint Theodora lived in with her husband. After being married for 12 years, the impious king became very sick and was suffering tremendously. Theodora became distressed because she knew that her husband wanted to die, but continued to live in an unbearable pain. One evening, the queen fell asleep at her husband's bedside and saw a terrifying vision. The Theotokos was holding the Christ child and was surrounded by many angels. Theophilus was cowering beneath the Virgin Mary. At the Panaia's order, the angels began to accuse Theophilus for his evil attitude towards icons. Theodora woke up and heard her husband shouting, "Woe is me! I'm suffering so much because of my disrespect toward the holy icons." At that moment he saw Theotictus, one of his servants, wearing a medallion that depicted the icon of Christ. The emperor signaled for the servant to come closer. Theoctistus was terrified because he thought the king was going to punish him for wearing the medallion. However, the emperor grabbed the medallion and kissed it. Immediately the pain lessened and the king was comforted. Theodora ran to her room and brought the icons of Christ and the Panagia to her husband. Theophilus venerated them with sincerity and respect, and just a few minutes later he reposed. "Michael," Theophilus' only son, was just 4 years old, yet the young child became the lawful king. However, due to his age, Saint Theodora served as the empire's ruler. She sent decrees throughout the empire, ordering that everyone who was imprisoned or exiled from the iconoclast persecutions was to be released immediately. She also worked to remove the iconoclast Patriarch of Constantinople, John VII. In his place, she restored Saint Methodius, who endured much suffering for his devotion to icons. Many monks and faithful people who had maintained their love for the icons during the iconoclasm came to Theodora and pleaded, "Please, most pious queen, order that the churches be once again adorned with the icons. By doing this, the Christian faith will be strengthened, and you and your children will be blessed." Honorable fathers, it shall be done. Also, I want to say that I have always venerated the sacred icons, even when the king was alive. Look, I have proof. She took out an icon of Christ and kissed it, saying, "Let whoever does not venerate icons of Christ, the Mother of God and the saint, be anathematized." The Holy Fathers gave thanks to God for giving them such a faithful queen. Theodora again said, I only ask one favor from you, honorable fathers. Please ask God to have mercy on my husband, who was an heretic. However, please know that before he died, Theophilus repented and sincerely venerated the holy icons. Patriarch Methodius answered, Dear Queen, God's love is great, so both clergy and laity will fast and do vigil services in the great church of Christ. God wishes for everyone to be saved, and hopefully he will have compassion on your husband. Also, we will perform as many works of mercy as possible to the poor people. Many of the faithful gathered in the great church of Christ and prayed for Theophilus. Saint Theodora also fervently prayed for her husband. On Saturday morning, after a week of prayer, the queen had another vision. She found herself standing in the midst of a group of savage-looking men holding implements used to torture people. They were dragging Theophilus to a large throne on which a majestic king sat. Saint Theodora fell at the king's feet and begged him to have compassion on her husband. Woman, great is your faith, the king said to Saint Theodora. Because of your tremendous faith and the prayers that my priests have offered, I will forgive your husband. The Lord then commanded that Theophilus be released and given to Theodora. When she woke up, Theodora had a feeling of joy in her heart that was indescribable. God provided Patriarch Methodius with a similar sign. That Friday evening, he took a large piece of paper and wrote down the names of all the heretical kings. At the very bottom of that list, he included Theophilus' name. He sealed it in an envelope and placed it beneath the holy altar. When he reopened it, Theophilus' name had been miraculously erased. This miracle became very well known, and Saint Theodora ordered that everyone gather in the great church of Christ with crosses, banners, and holy icons. They all gave thanks to God and proceeded around the city holding icons in their hands. When they returned to the church, they prayed the divine liturgy and then anathematized all the heretical iconoclasts before honoring the pious Orthodox people. Unfortunately, the saint's struggles were not over. Theodora's brother Bardas was a corrupt and evil man who began to exert influence over the young King Michael. Bardas accused Theodora of all sorts of things, and it reached the point where Michael exiled Theodora and his 5 sisters from the palace. The 6 of them spent the rest of their life at the monastery living in asceticism. However, both Bardas and Michael were punished for their weakness and died dishonorable deaths. In her lifetime, Saint Theodora endured many sufferings. Yet she always glorified and gave thanks to God for everything. She was rewarded for her struggles both in heaven and on earth. After she died, her sacred relic remained whole and incorrupt, dispersing a sweet fragrance. Her incorrupt body also healed many sick people. When Constantinople was captured by the Turks in 4053, her body was transferred to the island of Kerkyria in Corfu, where it remains to this day. For her great virtue and her struggles for our faith, the Church proclaimed Queen Theodora to be a saint. May God grant us to also meet her in the kingdom of heaven. Amen.